many of the draft prospects who are on our board. The combine is a marker because our scouts on the college side have spent the last several months pouring in a lot of time, energy, and thought into a number of the individuals that are coming to Indianapolis to perform. So we're looking forward to get to know these guys in more detail. More broadly, as we look through the next couple of weeks, it's always exciting for us. We think that we have a number of good young players on the roster currently, but the next several weeks, really the next several months, will give us the opportunity to add to our talent base. And really, this is kind of the first step in the off season to kind of map our planning with players that may be available. So with that, let me open up to any questions that you guys have.
Do you see this the biggest need for the team in series of receiver, or are you guys potentially looking at getting a quarterback as a Baker contract?
Yeah, no, quite honestly, we really go into, and a number of the local beat writers here have heard me say this before, really go into each offseason with the thought process of as if we had an expansion team. So we really look at every possibility, every player opportunity, try and match it to our resources, costs, and really try and be as opportunistic as possible to upgrade the entire talent base.
Andrew, what has been the extent of interaction with Mayfield, with you and the coaches? Where is he in his rehab?
Baker's doing well in his rehab. I think you guys know how hard he works. He's worked his tail off since the surgery. He's right on track. I talked to him right after the surgery. He was a little bit groggy. It's the first time he's ever had surgery in his entire career, but he's worked really hard, and we feel good about his progress.
Has there been more interaction than the first time?
I'm sorry?
Has there been more interaction?
Yeah, we've interacted with Baker as is typical with any player during the offseason. We've interacted with him multiple times throughout since the end of the season, and that's not too different than several players on our roster.
Andrew, what are the next steps for you guys with Jarvis? His Twitter threads at the balls. So what are the next steps?
Yeah, Jarvis, he's been a productive player for us for the past 4 years. A big part of helping us turn the tide and everything like that. The next couple weeks are big for us in terms of assessing the entirety of the roster, but Jarvis has been a key veteran for us, a key producer, and we're really grateful for all that.
Do you still see him as a member of this team next season?
Yeah, I'm not going to go into any of our specific planning or anything along those lines, but Jarvis has been a key veteran for us for a number of years.
Do you expect Clowney to enter free agency?
I know I've gotten asked this question, every year. Any of our players that are no longer under contract going into the next league year, there is a little bit of uncertainty. That's just the reality of it, right? They've gotten to the end of their deals. They really have the right to test the market, so to speak. In any given offseason, there are a number of guys where you'd like to bring them all back. It doesn't always work out that way, but we're hopeful to assemble the best team possible the next few weeks.
How would you evaluate
I would evaluate it as incomplete, quite candidly. I think it's always premature to evaluate a draft class after 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. We really try and look at it as maybe a 3-year time horizon to see how these players actually develop once they get to what we say at maturity. Certainly we saw some promising things from our rookie class, but the reality of it is all of them have things that they can improve upon and that they need to build upon going into next year.
You see the prospect of Garrett Wilson or maybe Chris Olave, a couple of these guys that are in-state guys that could potentially add some flash and some depth as well.
Yeah, it's always good to see Buckeyes playing at a high level and producing well, right? Those guys are very talented prospects, and we obviously have a lot of pride with our college out in Columbus. But look, there are a number of talented players across all positions, and we're looking forward to getting to know them a little bit better over the next several days. Yeah, Jack's doing well. He's right on schedule, if not a little bit ahead of schedule. He's working hard. We see him at the facility every day, and we'll take it day by day and week by week. But we're optimistic that he's going to make a strong return for us, Scott.
Andrew, this is the first time in a long time the Browns have had front office and head coach make it to a third year. How can that help you guys in the offseason?
I think. I think continuity is always a good thing because it's probably no different than a marriage where, with each passing year or, in some cases, each passing decade, you just have a little bit more familiarity. And, that's not too different as you try and marry your front office with the coaching staff, as we go through some of the different, significant points throughout, the off season where you just kind of know what to expect. You know how to work together. You know how to solve problems. And ultimately, you know how to execute together, upon a plan in season or, during the off season. So that level of comfort, that level of familiarity is certainly a plus and a bonus for us. And we're looking forward to entering our third off season cycle together.
Andrew, what are the best practices when you look at personnel, aligning with the coaching staff, having those conversations when there are disagreements on a specific player? Kind of what have you learned over the course of your career? What are you trying to implement to make sure that
Yeah, I think it's a couple things. I think number one, just zooming out, it really is just about problem solving, and ultimately you just try and get the best perspectives, really in the room or at the table to really solve the problem that you're trying to attack. Whether it's roster or unrelated to roster. It's really not too much more difficult than that, but I think the execution of it is making sure that you are bringing the right and proper perspectives to the table, and then ultimately listening and weighing them the right way depending on the problem that you're trying to solve. I didn't quite hear you. Yeah, no, so I think I will say certainly for us, and particularly to what I would call the spring scouting process, Zoom has really kind of cut down on some of the things that we would have done in person or used or tried to do via travel, and that cuts down on both time and money and makes you more efficient. That's something that we have incorporated into our process of the past 2 years, and we'll continue to do. This off season allows us to get a little bit more bang for our buck.
Andrew, when you look back.
Contract here or a contract. How do you psychologically handle that contract insecurity? Do you think a year ago Baker was maybe at all affected by knowing?
Aditi, I think number one, that's probably a better question for Baker. Just knowing Baker, I think he's pretty focused on the task at hand. And I think one of the realities of professional sports is you have a number of guys across the league who may play with 1 year left on their deal. So it's not like that's an exception for any individual player. And I think that can impact different players differently. Quite frankly. But that being said. The guys in our building that have been in that situation have typically handled those circumstances well, because at the end of the day, you only have so little time. You really don't have a lot of time to think about that. Certainly in season, your focus really has to be on working and preparing so that ultimately you can perform on the field as well as possible. And when that happens, and you're a good citizen off the field, that stuff takes care of itself.
Andrew, you're big on creating roster competition. Do you intend to do that at quarterback this year?
Yeah, probably a little bit, Tony, to my response a few minutes ago. We really do look at it like it's an expansion team, and if we have opportunities, to match resources with talent, we do want to continue to add talent to the roster, and that applies to every position.
Andrew, when you look back at Baker as a prospect, and you guys bring him in, obviously he's the number one pick, the guy who has a big college career, but what is it about his experiences at Oklahoma that you guys felt good that he was a guy that can take that step at the NFL level and maybe help him translate as well? And looking league-wide, guys who come from Oklahoma, why is it that you see those guys be somebody that has to
I didn't catch the last part of your question.
Just as far as Baker, Kyler, Jalen Hurts, guys that have come out of Oklahoma, why is it you think maybe some of those guys are having success?
Yeah, no, I think all those guys that you mentioned were highly productive players at the highest level of competition in college football. Obviously, Coach Riley did a fantastic job in terms of developing that position at Oklahoma, and all those guys, they're unique, right, in terms of their skill set, but I think they were comfortable in their own skin, knew who they were, and ultimately used their strengths to produce at the NFL level. So, I think that's actually a pretty good example that, quarterbacks, they come in all different shapes and sizes, right? And they have different skill sets, and so it's not a cookie cutter approach.
Andrew, do you expect Sorry. Do you expect J.C. Treader to be back with the Browns next season?
Yeah, like I said, Jason, for all of these, situations on our roster, we work through them over the next couple of weeks. JC's been a real productive veteran for us. He's been, a starter since 2017 for us, and played a lot of really good football. We expect him to continue to play some really good football. So.
What was the process like knowing you were part of that ammunition, and what has been a lesson?
Yeah, I don't know that the process changes significantly, because largely you're going to vet the entire draft class, because as much as we like to think that we can predict how the outcomes are going to happen at the top of the draft, the reality is we all are guessing. We're making educated guesses. So the importance of being prepared and being flexible and being able to pivot doesn't change whether you have 1 first-round pick or 3 first-round picks. I think if you are in a situation where you have multiple, really the thought and preparation before the draft comes in terms of strategy, right? Whether you're going to select a player, whether you're going to turn, one of those draft assets into multiple draft assets, and ultimately, how you may move up or down the board. So I think that's probably where more of the time is spent, based on the players who will probably be available in the range that you would pick high, as opposed to the actual individual preparation regarding the current prospects.
Hey, Andrew, the NFL?
Sorry. Yeah, look, I think you look. Myles Garrett is one of the best players in football. David Njoku has played really good football for us over the past 5 years. Obviously, Jabril is no longer with us, but has turned into a productive pro. And that draft also produced an additional first-round pick. So if you look in the totality of it, I think it's something that helped move the roster forward for sure.
Hey, Andrew.
Defensive line are 2 positions that you don't have a lot of players on the contract right now. Are those the top priorities for you to build the roster?
I wouldn't necessarily say that they're necessarily a top priority, Tony. Obviously, we have to get more players under contract in both of those spots. Needless to say. Ultimately, we're going to prioritize opportunity, and I think there are a number of ways to assemble the team or construct the roster that ultimately allows you to reach your goal of winning games. So, we'll take the next couple weeks and like I said, try and map our resources to opportunities.
Hey, Andrew, the NFL stopped requiring the Wonderlic test this year. I'm wondering what you ever thought of it, if you factored it highly into your evaluation, or what you thought of that direct assessment, and if there are any other direct assessments that you're going to start using instead of it, or that you've always preferred. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, quite honestly, we thought the Wonderlic was outdated. That's not something that really held a lot of weight for us. There are other cognitive measures that we use. I wouldn't necessarily go into detail with what those are in this setting.
The question I was going to ask is, when you look at your receiver room, how do you want that to alter different body types, versatility? Is there a vision you have for that room?
As many good players as possible.
We'll take one more question.
Hey, Andrew, every time we talk to David Njoku, he says he wants to be back. He loves it. He said you guys have been talking with his agent. So where do things stand? And then if he can't get something done, do you consider him a potential franchise tag candidate?
Yeah, it's a good question, Nate. I think you know me well enough that those business considerations I'll keep pretty close to the vest and in-house. Any discussions that we have with players or agents, those remain confidential.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, gang.
Over by that other podium if you want to link the locals over there.
Which one?
By 6, just that little open space.
Family good and everything?